to connect with every creative writer in the world. And I need your help. The world is constantly changing, which is why it's our duty. No, it's our responsibility to inspire creativity. My creative writing tips, tricks, and strategies are going to help you become a better writer, so that way you can beat procrastination. Join me on this journey to unite the creative writing industry. And let's inspire creativity in the world together. What does creative writing mean to you? And we are live. Welcome to Kauffman Writes, your daily stream for motivation, inspiration, discussion, and maybe a little bit of procrastination. But don't worry, I won't tell anyone. I'm your host, Kauffman, and you found yourself at Story Structure Tuesdays, shown by you to be one of the top topics that you need help with or that you want to talk about. So we've been having a couple workshops around structuring your story over the past couple of Tuesdays, and they have been so phenomenal. All right, let me hop into the comments. Hey, what's up, Atomic? Welcome to the stream. Taco Tuesday. Tacos sound good. You get a free taco if you come join to talk about story structure. I wish I had some tacos to give out. I'll be like, all right, you're working on a story, and you get a taco, and you get a taco. I totally took your advice, Atomic, and I finally put together that little opening reel. Finally, I got the countdown. I'm like, okay, it's my first iteration of it. I think I'm good with it. I'm good with what we've got so far. So for today, we're going to be hopping into talking about story structure. How do you structure your story? Now, story structure is broken up into three components: plot, character, and then the technical side of it in terms of logistically formatting like paragraphs, dialogue, and so on and so forth. Now, the past couple of Story Structure Tuesdays, we dug into the components of plot and character and combining them. I went over a couple of my techniques, and I tried to show a couple of things. Let me pull this up onto the screen. Oh, that's not a good look. Let's see. Give me a second. Let me fix this. All right, here we go. So last week we went into the last couple of Tuesdays. We went over a couple areas of story structure. I want to say so far we've gone over structuring story, the core component of it. I went over some techniques with structuring your story. We talked about some non-standard formats last week with poetry, protagonists, and when you're writing something that's not like a common type of writing style. That was pretty cool. And then, yes, so I thought today, why not be a good thing to talk about? Formatting. So hopping into how do you like format stuff correctly? Especially if, let's say, you're working on maybe like a short story or a novel. What's the right way to format your work? So that's what we're going to hop into today, structuring and formatting. Hey, what's up, Steph? Welcome to the stream. Good to have you over here on YouTube. I'm so used to seeing you coming forth from Twitch. Welcome, my friend. Okay, so as I think about structuring stories, right, and I think about like how do we structure things when we're working on a new story? Now, for me, let me pull this up. All right, so story structure, let's just call it logistics, technical formatting, and tools. We'll call it that. So I'm actually curious, for those of you who are here in the stream right now, what what program or software do you use for when you're writing? Assuming that we're not offline and we're not writing like in a book or a notepad or on a pen, what software do you use to tell your stories? As you can see from my, 100 and I think I'm almost at 130 days of writing. You see that I use Microsoft Word the most consistently. In connecting with writers over this past 6-month period, I've learned that I would say the number one most popular writing software that I've probably come across is a mix between Microsoft Word and then Google Docs. Those are the two that I see very, very predominantly used. I want to say for scripts, I've seen a mix of Final Draft, which is a very popular script writing software, and then there's this new one online, which is actually super cool. I need to check it out. So when I think about structuring my story, now you guys have seen me, like you've seen, I'm literally just like, I don't put a lot of thought into using the formatting and the settings to adjust things I should, right? I'm usually just like chapter, and then I'll knock this down. Let's go that. Story goes here. And that's usually like my format for the most part. Let's say I'll go this has a beginning, middle, end, and then my next chapter. And this generally tends to be the format that I stick to when I'm working on my stories, right? And it's something that's worked. It's worked very easy for me, but I also recognize that it's probably not the most efficient, right? Now, I know that I've worked with a lot of storytelling features and a lot of storytelling formats before, where you can actually add like logistical components to it to make the process easier. For instance, something, if you're using Word, something that I found a lot of value out of, especially when it comes to editing. As I'm working on my storytelling, and maybe you do or do not know this, you can actually add comments throughout. Now, when you add a comment, I'll pull this up for a second. When you add a comment, you can make notes to yourself. And this is actually pretty great if you're on page 102 and you're like, character sucks, rewrite. Let's see. I think you guys can kind of see that. There you go. Blow that. Let's see if I can. Okay, well, you can't really see that too much. But so you can see then whenever you get back to that part of the story and I click on there, this comment will pop up. So then when I go to the next thing, it will add a new comment and then it creates a list. I found that making notes for yourself is very, very beneficial. Let's see. So when we're working on the story itself, there's so many components that we have to like keep track of, right? We have to keep track of I will make this a little smaller. There we go. So what do we keep track of, right? So we have to keep track of character. We have to keep track of plot. We have to keep track of world building. What else? We have to keep track of locations, kind of world building. So I'll put locations as like, actually, let's do this differently. So to keep track of character, plot, locations, and this would be under world building. Let's see. So what else do we have to keep track of as we're working on our story? We have to keep track of like ideas. I would say like dialogue, kind of. I would say dialogue would be a good one. Dialogue. What else? As we're working on our storytelling, like what are other things that we have to keep track of? I would say that we have to keep track of the actual like formatting, right? We have to make sure that we're formatting things correctly. And you know, weirdly enough, the number one mistake that I see out of all the stories I've been submitted over this past like 4 or 5 months is the incorrect use of quotation marks when it comes to character speaking. I'm very surprised because I actually like always assume all these things that I know are common knowledge, but then I see these in the work and I'm like, okay, well maybe they're not focused on the formatting because it's a rough draft, and that's fine. I think it's formatting is more important when you're giving it to somebody else, but you're saving yourself time by doing the formatting correctly when you're writing it. So formatting things correctly. Put my number one mistake. Writer's not using quotation marks. Let's see, Atomic. I use LibreOffice, which is a free alternative to my MS Office. Okay, so it's kind of like a similar type of tool. And I know that's always a really good system, or it's always a really good way to find things that are free, right? Because essentially, like most of us are broke writers. We're working on a budget. Usually we have a day job, we got other things going on, and like we got to minimize the amount we're spending on the writing process until we got some published books and it's hopefully making us some money. So trying to find free and low cost writing tools, absolutely 100%. I'm going to put that here. I want to put in writing tool recommendation is LibreOffice. I'm kind of curious, Atomic, how did you come across LibreOffice, or was that just something you like researched, or like how'd you come across it? And then do you use it just because it's free, or is the functionality of it very like easy to use? I'm kind of curious. Because I mean, like, even as like I think about Microsoft Office that I'm so used to using over time, at least for my for novels and short stories, there's so many features of it that I'm like loosely familiar with, but it's things that I don't really like dive deep into, and it's probably something I'm going to coming in a future video. Let's see, I saw a video from one author where she said she lost an entire book because her file became corrupted. Oof. Oh, that hurts. That hurts. That hurts my soul. The worst thing is that I have never lost an entire book, but I have lost quite a lot of work. I lost a full draft that I did of a play, actually, when I was working on a stage play. Must have been about 5 or 6 years ago. And like I learned the mistake when I was younger, when I had a bunch of random little writings on it and I lost my computer, and I was like, okay, well, I always have to save things. Like moving forward, save everything. So like when I'm working on stories, I have like a process where I'm saving it weekly. But 5 years ago, I had saved it. I had saved it to the cloud. I had saved it onto a backup drive. So I had saved it to 2 separate locations outside of the computer. The computer itself got damaged. The backup drive file was corrupted, and then the online, the OneDrive that I'd saved it to couldn't access it. So I ended up losing like a draft's worth of work for one of the stage plays. And I was like so frustrated. And one of the worst things to experience as a writer is writing something, whether or not it's good or bad, writing something and then losing the time that you spent doing it. Especially because time is that one resource that's finite. So that is the absolute worst. Like I did everything in my power that time and it still did not change a thing. Let's see, I forget how I found it, but I started using it a number of years ago when they stopped including MS Office with some new PCs. Yeah, I think that's around the time they started shifting Microsoft Office to a more of a subscription format. Yeah, I remember that. I remember being kind of confused. I'm like, wasn't Microsoft Office like a free thing? But they shifted to it being the Microsoft Suite and then doing the subscription model. And now sometimes you get it free with things, but it's basically like you're getting it free as part of the subscription for the first X period of time. It was something that they did that was kind of sneaky on the back end because most people are using Microsoft Office. So when we're formatting our stuff, right, we have so many things to keep track of, right? I got character, plot, location, new ideas, dialogue, formatting things correctly. And then like, what about like outlines for future stories? Outlines for future stories. Like this is just assuming like, what if we're working on like a series, right? So there's so much that we have to keep track of. How do we format everything correctly? Like how do we structure things correctly so that way we don't lose track? Now, part of it is organization. Now, obviously, like for me, I would say part of my organization is 50% online and then 50% off is using whiteboards, sticky notes, writing in notebooks. Probably not the most efficient thing, but it's something that's always worked for me. I'm on the lookout as I'm going through this journey on looking for programs that I can like dig into that are going to make the process a little more efficient. And when I come across them, I'll share the journey with y'all. That way you can kind of see. I think as much as we can do to make the process easier and make it more efficient, we're less likely to stop ourselves from writing when life gets busy, when life gets tough. We're less likely to deal with writer's block, burnout, and frustration if we've made the logistical aspect of writing as easy as possible. My motto with writing, make it fun, make it easy. And that way you can tell the story you want to tell without getting bogged down by the process. Let's see. The problem with corrupted files is that a backup copy of a corrupted file is no good. It's better to make multiple subsequent backups rather than syncing files. That's a really good tidbit. Really good piece of advice, Atomic. Thanks for sharing that. Clearly I've had to learn that the hard way. As maybe it's just like a thing that writers have to go through. That's like the absolute worst. Absolute worst. One of the things I cannot stand. So okay. So thinking about structuring. So when I think about what does the specific format of my story look like, we're not going to touch upon character or plot. I want to think about just the visual for a second. Let's see. I'll pull up Last Scarecrow for just a moment. So y'all can see with Last Scarecrow, right? Like clearly you guys have been joining me along in the journey, but I'll make this easier. Right, so you can see my format's pretty simple, right? I use, well, that's obviously the opening, but I generally go chapter title, paragraphs, next chapter title, right, like that. And then sometimes if I'm doing it correctly, I will page break it as it should be. Right, and then when we think about how we want the story to look, how we want it to come across, right? You think we want to see that there's some blank spaces, right? So I'm just going to pull out for a second. A little too much. I don't like that. That is looking good. So as we're looking through here, right? So you see, I generally don't tend to have very like long paragraphs. At most, I sometimes have paragraphs that are taking up this is maybe 40%, 30 to 40%, because we want to make it, I'm going to reiterate this, make it easy to be a reader. Imagine yourself as a reader. You go into a library or you go into the online Amazon Kindle store, there's millions of books to read. Millions upon millions of books to read. Some amazing, some trash, a lot in the middle. If somebody is drawn to your cover art or they're drawn to your story and they choose to take the time to open the book and start reading it, you don't want a chance losing them because it is visually too hard to read. And that's like the easiest thing. I'm telling you, that is the easiest thing to fix out of the formatting process, right? All like the harder things is right, the character development, the world building, the story, the plot, and like merging those together to tell a cohesive and an engaging story. But the easy things is that visual aesthetic, right? So by making it as easy as possible for for the reader to engage with, you're less likely to lose them. If you lose, I would much rather that a reader stops reading my story because they're like, you know what? I don't agree with the story. I don't agree with the formatting on the, or not the format, but I don't agree with, like, this just isn't my type of story. Like, I'm fine with that, right? Because my story is not for everyone. I would rather lose them to not a connection with the story than being like, hey, this is just not well written, or it's not formatted. A lot of the times a reader will walk away with thinking this just is poorly written, when realistically, some of the things are just easily fixed by some logistical things. I feel old. I still double space after sentences. Atomic, you and me both, my friend. You and me both. I was like, I'm pretty sure I still double tap. Let's see, how do I have it? Oh, weird. I was like, funky. For some reason, some of the in one of these early chapters, some of the indents is a little off. I was like, okay. All right, Word. I see you. Well, but yeah, I'm like so used to double tapping in mine. Let's see. Double. Oh no, okay. I only have a single tab. I have a single tab, but I know a lot of time with formatting software, you can actually adjust it so that way it goes through and does it automatically. Let's bring this back up. Let's see. I've never lost any of my writing, but I wished I saved my old floppy disk to see how my writing has changed. Right. And especially now, like with the digital age, where we're in a day and age where you can find a way to keep track of your storytelling over time and then go back to it like 10, 20 years from now. And you'll like see how much like you grew as a writer. I think, Stephanie, one of the things I did when I was young was I wrote a bunch of like stories out of in a bunch of journals and notebooks, but then I ended up saving them more so because I needed to like transition them to a second draft onto a digital record. But I ended up saving them. And now when I go back and I look at them and I'm like, sometimes it's cringe, but sometimes I'm proud. And we see just how much we've grown. It's an incredible experience. Awesome. And by the way, if you're just hopping into the stream, we're just talking about structuring your story correctly. I was like, what are like the ways that we structure stories? Let's see. Hey, what's up, John? Welcome to the stream, my man. Yeah, totally no worries. We'll be here. So when I think about the logistical side of it, right? So between headings, paragraphs, indents, a couple things that we know are standards for, I'm going to put formatting standards. Is you're always indenting your paragraphs. How much the indent is can be a little up to you. There are some standards, but generally it's and you're indenting the first of every paragraph. What are other standards? I was talking about this before. All dialogue is in quotation marks. Another standard. Now, like I said earlier, this isn't a standard, but don't have page-long paragraphs. Break up your sections. Break up sections, either chapters or beats, with I would say with some type of visual with some type of visual. This could be asterisks, space, or new pages, or asterisks, page break, or titles. That's a really easy one. It's no, but yeah, that's an easier one to keep in mind. Hey, what's up, Mommy Telly? Welcome to the stream. We're just talking about structuring stories right now, and kind of like what are like some logistical things when we structure our stories. What I'm curious, Mommy Telly, what types of software do you use when you're working on your story? Let's see. Draft 2 Digital has formatting available. I haven't tried it, but they allowed you to download the file for free when you publish to them or not. Draft 2 Digital. I don't think I've heard of that before. Is that like is that a publishing company? Let's see. Draft 2 Digital. We are self-publishing with support. Your book is our priority. Interesting. Interesting. So it looks like it's another ebook publisher. Interesting. So probably like a predominant ebook publisher, it looks like. They just require minimum formatting for your uploaded file, like bold centered chapter headings, page breaks, etc. And this is actually a really good call out, right? So if your story is in its second or third draft, or if you're going to send your story to either an editor or to a publisher, they're going to have formatting standards, right? And every publishing house is different. Let's pull this up. What are the formatting standards for an Amazon formatting standards to submit a story to be e-published on Amazon? So I'll pull this up so y'all can see. So I'm kind of curious, right? So most of us, let's see. I think I completely forgot. All right. So most of us, so let's see. So it gives you specific, for the page counts, it gives you specific margins. I just put in like, what are the formatting standards if you're submitting a story to be e-published on Amazon, right? So it looks like margins, there's a standard, paperback submission guidelines. It gives you lead. So it talks about if you have images in your story, which is really interesting. Let's see. It gives you specific file specifications. Now, probably a lot of stories aren't going to have too many images in them unless you're like the type where maybe you're including maps, or maybe you're including certain like location images. Like that could be super cool. And I imagine that's probably where it applies to. Or if you're doing like a nonfiction style book, you could be doing a like maybe if you're doing like self-help or like routines or examples of systems that you're using. That's one I see pretty predominantly. In Mommy Tell, you're saying pen and paper than the Google Doc. It is so far, yeah. So I'm not surprised. I was saying that Google Doc and Microsoft Word are probably the two most popular writing software that I've seen. I think Google Doc probably because it's so ingrained into Microsoft emails and all the things that we're already using. Interesting. So if you're self-publishing to Amazon, it's saying that most of the common points of failure is missing pages. Like if you're e-publishing a book, how are you missing pages from your story? I was like, I guess it's probably pretty important to do like a final check through if you're going to e-publish. Interesting. PDF creation. Yeah, and it looks like it basically gives you pretty specific size formats for margins, title cover, color page if it's a colored book. I was just kind of curious to look into that. Minimum font size is 7. Yeah, so these are all pretty easy. These are all pretty easy, like technical formatting things that you can do in literally like a few minutes. That none of that is super difficult. I think the more challenging thing is if you've written, say, 100-page story, and let's say that you've either written, you haven't indented anything, you haven't You've used apostrophes for all your character dialogue. You haven't italicized or used a bold to highlight any things that really stand out. You're giving yourself so much extra work on the back end when you have to go and fix it. Absolutely. Now, when I think about the story itself, right? And this is actually a whole nother topic that I'll probably save for next week. But when I think about the story itself, how do you balance from a storytelling perspective? Story. How do you balance character development, world building, dialogue? So this is probably actually a really good topic to think about. So when you're writing your story, right, and you're thinking about like logistically, like let's say you're starting on a new chapter. How do you know if like the first paragraph, do I start off with describing the location? Do I start off with describing the character? Do I do interiority? Do I do action? Do I start off with dialogue? Now, the truth is there's no right or wrong way, right? Because it's going to be specific to your story that you're trying to tell. For one story, the right thing could be starting off with an action sequence, right? Of showing what the character's physically doing. For another type of story, it could make more sense to describe the location and where the story's taking place. But what does need to happen is we need to be able to balance throughout each section or each chapter the character development, which can happen through interiority, action, or dialogue, with the plot of the story in a way that feels unique and engaging, right? And I haven't even touched upon variety of word choice. Variety of word choice is like a huge thing, right? The bigger vocabulary we have, the more likely we are to not repeat words and phrases consistently. Let's see, Atomic. Draft 2 Digital offers print and ebook. They take 10% on top of the store's cut, but the benefit is they publish to multiple outlets at once, saving you the hassle of setting up separate accounts. Interesting. So it's kind of like a good option if you want to go both routes for both the print and ebook. They take 10% on but they publish to multiple outlets at once. Whereas if you're publishing with Amazon, you're probably just publishing the digital route, right? And the reason it's free to publish with Amazon, y'all may or may not know this, but the reason it's free to publish is because Amazon does not preprint the books. I mean, first off, they're digital, right? They have the digital option and they have the hard copy and paperback if you so choose. But Amazon doesn't print the book until it's sold. So when it's sold, they already get the money. Well, you get the money. I think they take off like 30%. Amazon's cut for KDP is actually pretty high, but they take off I'm pretty sure it's 30%. It sucks, but it is what it is. So they take their cut, right? And then we're also not even thinking about taxes, right? Which that's technically on the back end. The government's got to take their cut and the business has got to take their cut, right? And then we get however much we make per copy of the book. However, if you go through a traditional publisher or you're going through a company like Draft 2 Digital, where they're also publishing print books in stores, then what they're doing is they're printing all of the books in a warehouse, print the books, and it sits in a warehouse for a second, and then it gets sent to, it gets distributed to whatever storefronts are going to sell it, right? So then there's that difference. Hence why traditional publishers generally cost more, is more of a process, and they have more of their own logistics because a traditional publishing house takes the risk. They're basically saying, we believe your story is going to be good based off whatever their approval process is. Therefore, we're going to invest by printing out these books beforehand on the chance that people may or may not buy them. So much more of a risk with traditional publishing, but also an entirely different route too. There's pros and cons to both traditional and e-publishing. I wouldn't consider myself an expert. I would say I'm an enthusiast, and I still have a lot more research that I have to do for the publishing front. and I'll probably include y'all in the journey as I get farther into Last Scarecrow. My knowledge, I'm much more knowledgeable about scripts and the screenwriting business because I was so ingrained into Hollywood culture for such a long period of time. So I'm probably going to be spending this year really focusing on better understanding the publishing industry and then what's the right structure for me for Last Scarecrow, and then kind of what I'm feeling between the two. And so dealing with uploading individually to different sites and having to make sure your files meet the publishing requirements for each. Yeah, and that's a really good point, right? So each site that you're going to publish it to is probably going to have different formatting requirements. Literally, all the more reason to stick to the standards of paragraphs, dialogue, the things that we were talking about earlier. Stick to those standards. That way you don't have to worry about reformatting them later on down the line. Because once again, we probably don't have a lot of time. So let's make it easy. They also offer free ISBN, just like Amazon. Okay, that's awesome. That's really, really cool to know. Thanks for sharing, Atomic. I appreciate that. Definitely we'll be on the lookout for different types of publishing, especially as I kind of dive into like book publishing and e-publishing later in the year. And let's see. So I think that's actually a good beat. But by the way, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. Make sure to tap that button, tap the follow, the subscribe button, because you'll be alerted when I come out and do these daily live streams. Kauffman Writes Monday through Friday, casual writing group and workshops, Saturday story and critique group. Come submit your stories for free readings and critiques. And then Sunday is our Creative Right Now podcast. And this Sunday, I actually have a really cool guest lined up. We're going to be talking about how to channel your inner writer. So it'll actually be a very unique experience. I'm like super stoked about it. I'll probably release details for it Friday. So definitely make sure you're following and subscribing so that way you are alerted when we go live and launch these things. All right. So that's a good beat on structuring and formatting. If you're just hopping into the stream, don't worry. I actually got you covered. So at the end of the stream, I add time codes to the stream so you can watch on the replay. And then that way you can hop back and forth to the part of the video that brings you the most value. And if you showed up and you're like, you know what, I really want to learn about structuring and maybe you just missed it, I actually have all of the previous workshops on structuring a story on the YouTube channel Kaufman's Corner. There's a workshops playlist. I've linked it in the description below if you're on YouTube. So click on that playlist and you'll be able to see previous workshops. These story structuring workshops have been pretty popular. So I know one or two of them I think had some connectivity issues. I might do a video in the future with just structuring if it continues to be popular. Mixed structuring is an easier one for me to chat about. So with that being said, it is time for our writing sprint. So we can't call ourselves writers if we're not doing some writing, but don't worry. Let's say it's been a long day for you and you're like, you know what? I'm not feeling the writing vibe today. Sit back, chill, and I'm going to throw on some music and I will write vicariously for the both of us. Or maybe you're feeling a little inspired. Maybe you're like, you know what? I got the motivation. It's only going to be, let's see, today I'm going to do it for 25 minutes. We're going to do a 25-minute sprint. You can do it, but just like keep in mind, right? A writing sprint or writing can involve brainstorming, writing, editing, or the development process. So if you want to join me at any part of the process, let's do it. All right, so I'm going to adjust my screen so I can pull up. Nope, that's not very user-friendly. All right, here we go. So I think I got this. All right, so I am all set on my end. Let me just adjust this formatting. Perfecto. And we are good. All right, so I got Last Scarecrow pulled up, and I hope you're ready to join me in some writing. Let's see, fixing some leaky writing. Mommy Telly, that was the highlight of our comedy today. Fixing some leaky writing, filling in the plot holes. Oh my god, I absolutely love that. Thank you for the humor that made the moment, Mommy Telly. All right, so I got 25 minutes on the clock, and let's throw up the music. Our very own Atomic Elf mix number 2. Utabomb.com. All right, 25 minutes on the clock, and it's time to write now. That's a good stopping place. All right, writing sprint done. That was a good little writing sprint. Let me pull this back up. So I felt really successful with that. We're getting close to the graveyard of the last. Well, yeah, we're basically there almost. The Graveyard of the Last is a location that has been talked about since the 30% mark of the story. So the Scarecrow has clearly been working there for a while. Him and his friends were all flying on the quilt, the magic carpet, and then the carpet, whatever happened, it veered off course and Scarecrow was sent flying off the carpet. And now there he's lying there surrounded by a fog full of, who's to say? But what he does know is it's probably strange that he's being greeted and welcomed warmly by those who have long passed in his journey. So this is going to be a fun little callback to some of the creatures and animals that he's encountered. But what's going to happen? We'll continue on tomorrow. Is he going to survive this part of the journey, or is it going to be forever changed? So I'll continue on that with my next writing sprint tomorrow. I think hitting the graveyard probably puts me officially at around the 72, 73% mark of the story. So super exciting. All right. So we got some good writing sprints in. We had a really good chat with stories discussion. If you hopped into the stream a little late, make sure that when the stream ends that you go check out the replay. We actually had a really great discussion around formatting, around some logistics with structuring your stories correctly. So we touched a little bit upon publishing, upon formatting with ebooks as well. So it was pretty cool, pretty beneficial. All right. So I will be back tomorrow with World Building Wednesdays. We'll hop into how do you build out the world for your story. Let's see. I think tomorrow maybe we'll dig into some popular worlds and we'll think about what are things that have worked in worlds that we really enjoy being involved with. So we'll have a little fun tomorrow, same time, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. I'll be here. Hope to see you there. So don't forget to tap the like button on your way out. Let me know that you got value out of this. And that is all that I got for you today, writers. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers.